Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into the absolute largest, least understood, and honestly most alien habitat on our entire planet, the deep ocean. Now, beneath the ocean's surface, sunlight does not last forever. Right at the top, the water is familiar, bright, and blue. But as we descend, color just begins to disappear. Sound fades into absolute silence, and the pressure rises dramatically. We're entering a massive world built entirely beyond our normal human senses, a place where life survives and even thrives completely without the sun.
Here's our dive plan for today. We'll be moving through the twilight boundary, surviving the twilight zone, scarcity in the midnight zone, the vast abyssal plain, vents, seamounts and trenches, and finally, exploration and human pressure.
All right, as we start our descent, I want you to literally imagine a complete sensory loss. Up here near the surface, our eyes and minds are totally built for light. Our bodies are perfectly adapted to standard pressure, and our brains rely heavily on horizons and landmarks to figure out where we are. But the deep ocean, it systematically strips all of that away. It's not hostile because it's evil, it's just hostile to us because it belongs to a completely different physical reality.
So that brings us to our first stop, the twilight boundary, where sunlight starts to die.
Now, there's no sudden gate or warning sign floating in the water, obviously, but at exactly 200 meters down, the rules of survival completely flip. At this depth, the light gets so incredibly weak that it can't even carry enough energy for photosynthesis. The ocean is literally separating from the sun. To put that into perspective, 200 meters is roughly 2 football fields stacked straight down. That is it. That's all it takes for the sun to entirely lose its power over the food chain.
And this basically illustrates the ultimate divide on our planet. We are living a fast-paced, sunlit world driven by plants and phytoplankton, and dropping into a slow, dark world driven by sinking food, scavenging, and extreme pressure. Life down here has to be completely reimagined just to survive the conditions.
Moving right along to Section 2, Surviving the Twilight Zone, a city of light without the sun.
You've probably seen pictures of glowing sea creatures, right? Well, down here, bioluminescence isn't just pretty scenery. Producing your own light is a calculated, literal life or death decision. Animals use these blue pulses and green flashes like a secret, complex language, or to camouflage and break up their silhouette so predators lurking below can't spot them. It's wild. They use light to confuse and momentarily blind enemies, or as a glowing lure to reel in a curious meal. Every single flash has a specific function. But remember, every signal carries a massive risk of exposing yourself in the dark water.
Here's something absolutely mind-blowing. This zone hosts one of Earth's greatest migrations, and it happens every single day. Countless small animals commute upward toward the surface at night to grab a bite under the cover of darkness. Then, right before dawn, they silently sink back down into the depths to hide from predators. This massive daily commute actually pumps insane amounts of carbon energy deep into the ocean every single night, making the deep ocean a vital piece of Earth's long-term carbon storage system.
Let's sink even deeper into Section 3, Scarcity in the Midnight Zone, where pressure completely replaces light.
Plunging between 1,000 and 4,000 meters, we enter a world where we would be totally blind without a submarine's headlights. There is no sunrise, no sunset. Outside that narrow beam of light, the ocean returns instantly to blackness. And at this depth, the crushing weight of the water column completely defines existence. Every 10 meters you drop adds more weight. By the time you hit 4,000 meters, the pressure is roughly equivalent to having a fully grown elephant standing right on your thumb. It would instantly crush any surface-adapted machine.
It sounds like a horror movie, right? But actually, we have to view this as a masterclass in the economy of scarcity. These animals aren't getting crushed because they literally evolved inside this pressure. They rock these huge, gaping mouths and stomachs that can expand like balloons. Why? Because in the dark, they have absolutely no idea when their next meal is going to show up. If food appears, even if it's larger than they are, they have to be ready to eat it on the spot or face starvation. Everything down here is built to fiercely conserve precious energy.
Hitting the absolute bottom brings us to Section 4, the vast abyssal plain, basically the largest black desert on Earth.
So how on earth does the food web work down here on the bottom? It all revolves around something called marine snow. This is dead plankton, mucus, and organic waste gently falling from the sunlit world far above. But every so often, a real jackpot hits the floor, like a massive dead whale carcass. In a place where energy arrives so slowly, absolutely nothing gets wasted. Scavengers practically sprint from miles around for this deep-sea buffet, turning a single fallen whale into a bustling, temporary island of life, until bacteria break down the very last scraps.
But this endless, flat black desert isn't entirely empty, bringing us to Section 5, Vents, Seamounts, and Trenches, Deep-Sea Oases.
Picture this. Deep on the seafloor, you have these hydrothermal vents acting like alien chimneys, blasting out superheated mineral-rich fluids directly from the Earth's crust. This introduces us to a real game-changer called chemosynthesis. It's the process where microbes actually use this raw chemical energy to produce organic food in total darkness. When scientists discovered this, it literally rewrote the textbooks. It proved once and for all that life on Earth doesn't just depend on the sun. It will gather and thrive anywhere usable energy exists.
Life also finds a way to cling to seamounts, which are massive underwater mountains. Check out this contrast. Shallow tropical corals rely on sunlight and grow really quickly, right? But ancient deep-sea corals exist in pitch blackness. They capture tiny food particles from passing currents, and they require absolute patience. A deep coral garden can take centuries or even millennia to grow branch by branch into these incredibly complex, fragile forests of bone and glass.
And finally, we reach the deepest scars in the Earth's crust, the Haddle Trenches. These plunge nearly 11 kilometers straight down. To put that in your head, you could toss Mount Everest into one of these trenches and still have over a mile of water above its peak. The pressure here is so catastrophic it destroys ordinary human engineering, yet no way, life still exists. You've got specialized organisms like little amphipods and snailfish living quietly in these extreme depths, proving that life pushes all the way to the absolute bottom edges of our planet.
We've reached the very bottom, which brings us to our final and most urgent section. Exploration and human pressure. A small light in a vast darkness.
Here is the harsh truth. The deep ocean is not safe just because it's far away. Distance delays our impact, for sure, but it doesn't prevent it. As our exploration tools shine a light on these habitats, our footprint follows right behind. Plastic pollution has already been found in the absolute most remote trenches on Earth. Noise from ships blasts heavily down into the darkness. Climate change is shifting deep oxygen and temperature levels. And now, there's a growing push to mine the seafloor for polymetallic nodules, which could totally devastate habitats that took millions of years to develop.
So, the really crucial point we've got to ask ourselves as we map this final frontier is simply this. Will we understand the deep ocean before we inevitably change it? The deeper question is whether our knowledge, our caution, and our scientific curiosity can actually move faster than our desire for extraction.
At the end of the day, the deep ocean doesn't perform for us. It just continues in its cold darkness whether or not our cameras are there to witness it. And I think this quote hits the nail on the head. The last unknown world on Earth demands our utmost respect. It asks us to hit pause, to study before disturbing, and to choose humility before we permanently alter an ancient, slow-moving ecosystem. The deep ocean is the ultimate test of humanity's patience. So what do you think? Will we pass it? Thanks so much for diving into this explainer with me today.